What's up, guys? Aaron Findler. I don't know if y'all have ever gotten on YouTube or Google looking for a conversion from like a 01 to 10 Duramax frame if you want to make a short bed, and there ain't much on there. There's guys that cut it off on the back, which I don't think is the right way. Or if you get on Power Block or you want to watch the Super Strength video, you'd overrun with Rock Auto ads. So I'm getting ready to do one. It's not my personal truck, it's for a buddy, but I thought what better time to take a video. So I'm going to go over the right way to do this, where you split it at the seam, shorten it from the center, and you'll have a factory frame, as close to factory as you can get. So follow along with me on this. I'm going to try to do it all in one nice compact video. It's pretty much all factory parts, which is nice. They don't make some of the brackets that you need anymore, so you need to find a clean donor. I've got one outside, and I'll show you that a little bit throughout the video. But I'm real excited to hop in this. We're going to try to knock it out in a reasonable time. So let's get started. GM did us some favors whenever they did these frames. They kept them pretty interchangeable across the board. No reason not to when you're on the assembly line. But all frames are pretty much identical until you get right back to this seam. So we're going to be cutting this apart, removing some metal in that area, and that's how we're going to get the length that we desire. Also, there's a couple inches on the back of the frame we're going to have to cut. A short bed would be 3 inches. This is 8, so we're going to be taking 5 inches off, re-drilling some holes, shifting it all forward. Nothing that's impossible, but we're going to get going on that. So anyway, we're going to be taking this tank off as well. This is a 34-gallon tank. We're going to put a 26-gallon tank back in its place to make up for the length that we lost. We're going to be shifting this cross member forward. Obviously shortening the exhaust, spring hangers and everything like that. They'll be moving right along with everything else. So we're gonna get started on this and see how much progress we can make. I'm gonna start pulling axle, springs, exhaust, tank, and then we'll check in after that. All right, we are exactly 1 hour in as of now. I've got the axle pulled, fuel tank dropped, took the shocks off, cut the exhaust. I'm gonna trim it a little bit more specific later, but for now I went ahead and just cut it a little bit far ahead of the seam since it was welded. I'll grind it up and sleeve it back later. Dropped the fuel tank. All I did was I just came up here, undid the lines off the sending unit, folded them up out of the way, closed them off just so they're clean, unplugged it. The frame harness, I just went along, unclipped it, and slid it up underneath the cab where it's in a safe spot. So yeah, we're doing pretty good in the disassembly stage. Now it's gonna be start grinding into metal. We're past the fun stuff. Now we're into the nitty gritty of it. So anyway, doing pretty good. Pretty happy with it so far. Well guys, we've reached the point of no return. I went ahead and did a rough cut. I cut a little bit ahead of where I'm gonna have to grind it down to clean it up. But for the sake of, honestly, for ease and a little bit of safety, I went ahead and cut the frame and flipped it end over end. What I'm doing right now is I'm grinding these welds at this seam, and then I'm coming in with an air hammer and knocking it loose. There's a little bit of weld that you just can't quite get to, or at least not easy. So working on that right now, and then do both sides, flip it back over, finish it off. You have to cut this tube in half where it comes through this frame. Cut it about dead center, and then that way you can get your old sections of frame out. I've been working on this, cleaning up on the frame. When I cut it initially, I cut it with a plasma cutter. And it gives a decent cut, but it still needs a little bit of cleanup. I like using a flap disc. The original seam from the front bed mount is 41 3/4. We're sitting right at 28 right now. It leaves a little bit of room for adjustment whenever I move these hangers forward to slide it in, slide it out, make sure I get my leaf spacing the same and make sure everything's square. That's the most important part for everything. This is the piece that you take out, what it looks like. It's roughly 13 inches, a little bit more, but I waste a little whenever I cut it with the plasma, just for insurance reasons, so I don't short myself too much on the original part of the frame, because that's ultimately what we need to be right. So I cut this tube on the inside with my plasma, and then I'll dress it up. If you wanted to, you could do that, but this is creating a lot more work if you tried to save that portion where it comes through on that cross member. It's still a ton of metal. It'll be solid. I'll clean this up. It's quite a bit of work splitting all these factory welds. I have an air hammer, which makes it a lot easier. But right now we're just in the long part of cleaning up this metal, making it to where it's good and clean for welding whenever we get to that point. Next, I'll be chopping these hangers off. You come through and take these rivets and bust them all loose. You need this and this lower bracket
off, so that way you can swap in short bed hangers and brackets, which I have on the frame outside. We also have to move this. We're going to chop it off, move it forward about 2.5, 3 inches. So we'll get the exact measurement on that here in a bit off that donor frame. So making progress. It's a long, tedious job, but it's a fun turnout, so it makes it all worthwhile. All right, so I'm out here on this donor frame, and it was a really clean frame. It was a truck I bought that had a front end collision, but it came from the south, so I saved the back half because I knew I had this project lined up. So I just got done drilling out the rivets, and what I do when I cut these rivets is I come in the inside of the frame on the donor and drill those out, because this frame doesn't matter. So if I kind of grind a little extra on it, that's fine, because this section's going to the junkyard. And then at the bottom of the bracket, which you can see down here, I leave these 2 rivets intact, so that way both these brackets are one piece. That really helps me when I go to line it up on the frame, because it lands exactly where it's supposed to do it. So I leave those brackets, or those rivets attached, and I drill out these 2 that go against the base of the frame right here. So all in all, it's 8 rivets on this style frame. On the one inside, we had a few more, but that's because it's on the flat part of the frame. With the angle here, they lose a little space, so they do a few less rivets. I'm going to be bolting it back whenever I do it. It's the easiest way. I'm not a big fan of welding something that wasn't welded originally. That way, in case it ever has to come apart for any reason, it's a lot easier. Over here on the passenger side, I've got these drilled out, and as you can see, these rivets, I have an air hammer, and that makes it a lot easier. But you can see these rivets down here I was talking about earlier. I've already knocked these 2 out on the inside of the frame. And like I said, this frame doesn't matter, so I can grind a little extra if I need to, or do whatever I need to do to get these donor pieces out and get them out clean so they stay straight. So once I get these, we're getting to the point where it starts to go back together. I've got both of these frame pieces side by side. You can really see just how different they are. You could rework this piece if you didn't want to mess with getting a donor. Of course, you're gonna have to cut a little bit off top, and it's a slightly different angle. It's a lot more straight up because of the bed mount, the frontmost bed mount. But the easiest way to mount these, and the biggest thing with this job, is having a solid reference point and your leaf springs. Obviously, if everything's gonna be straight and true, not dog-legged whenever you get this job done, is this top bolt hole on the back of this leaf hanger matches the hole, the frontmost top hole on the original leaf hanger. So you take it, bring it up here to your frame, and as you can see, we have our original holes. And talk about a sweet spot. I mean, it bolts right in there, and that's where leaving this bracket in its factory spot and leaving those rivets intact really makes this easy. So what I like to do is, obviously a little harder since I'm holding this and recording it, but I hold it in place, and then I'll take a C-clamp and I come in on this bottom side and I just set that C-clamp in there, and it holds it in place like that. And then from there, I can start re-drilling all my holes and stuff like that. But anyway, that gives us a solid reference point. I'll put this bolt back in this leaf hanger, and then whenever I get all this slid into position permanently where I want it, then I'll know everything's straight and true. So that's seriously the biggest part of this job, is making sure everything's straight. All right, we're pretty much to the point now where it's time to burn it in. I've got everything slid into place. I put my leaf bolts back in. That's what I use as my measuring point. I go leaf bolt to leaf bolt to measure that. Before I took it apart, I'm measuring it now as I go back to part. 63 3/4 is the length that we're after. And I'm getting 63 3/4 on this side, 63 7/8 on that side. If I tap one over, the other one kicks back. So I'm gonna tack this in, then go over there, tap it forward, weld it in place, and should get it perfect at that point. So these seams, as you can see, I got a ratchet strap on this. Whenever I cut it apart, this piece, it kind of spread just a little bit on each side. So I stuck it together, I'll get it welded in, and then after that, I'll pop my ratchet strap loose and get everything else. So pretty much that's where we're at now. Afterwards, I still need to move this bed bolt, but that's kind of secondary to what we're worried about at the moment. So we'll do that and start putting everything back together. And I have 5 inches roughly I got to cut on the back here, which is fine because that's where I was hammering on it with a sledge. So that's kind of a free spot to hit it. You don't have to worry about messing it up since it's coming off anyways, to get our measurements all correct. So, all right, well, I'll follow up with the welds shortly.